In this lecture, we are going to learn about two more simple array methods which we can use to create arrays, or basically which we can use to fill the arrays with some elements. And these two methods are fill method and from method. So let's understand the use of each of them one by one. The fill method modifies an existing array by filling all or a portion of its element with a static value. It takes three arguments. The first argument is the value with which you want to fill the array. Then it also takes the start index from where you want to start filling, and the end index till where you want to fill that static value. The start and end index is optional. Let's try to understand this fill method with a simple example. So in here I have an empty array called ARR. Now what I want is I want to add some elements in this array. So here, instead of creating this array like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the array using new array constructor. And we have learned that when we pass a single integer value to this new array constructor, for example 1, this one will be considered as the size for the array which we are creating here. If I pass 8, that means we are creating an array with size 8. Now if we pass multiple values like 8 and 9, in that case this 8 and 9 will not be considered as size. Instead, it will be considered as elements of that array. So the size of the array will be 2 and its elements will be 8 and 9. But if we pass a single value here to this array constructor, then it simply means that here we are creating an empty array with size 8. And let me actually show you that. So if I say console.log and if I log this ARR, you will see that here we have an empty array whose size is 8. Each element of that array is basically empty. It does not have any element, but its size is 8. Now what we can do is on this array, we can call fill method, and there if I pass 1, here we are passing a static value. So now each element of this array, this empty array, it will be filled with 1. So the size of the array is 8. So each element of that array will be filled with 1. If I save the changes, you will see that now we have an array with size 8 and each element of that array is 1. Okay, here we can also specify the start index and end index. So if I specify start index as 2, the fill method will start filling from index 2. If I save the changes, you will see that the first two elements are empty, and from the third element the fill method has start filling this static value 1 for each element. I can also specify an end index. So for example, if I say 5 and if I save the changes, you'll see that from index 2, from here it has started filling. So for 2 it has filled, for index 3 it has filled 1, and for index 4 it has filled 1. For end index, it will not fill it. Basically here we are telling that till index 5 it has to fill, but the index 5 it will not be filled with the static value. I hope you got the point. So this is the use of fill method. Now you can also use fill method on an array where you have some elements. So for example, I can also use fill method on this numbers array. Okay, and if I only specify the value with which we want to fill this array, and if I save the changes, you will see for some reason, okay, here let's log numbers instead of ARR. You will see that now each element of this numbers array, it is also filled with this value 1. So all these values of this numbers array has been replaced with this value 1. And if I specify the start index, let's say 2, and in index, let's say 4 or maybe 5, if I save the changes, you will see that from index 2, it has started filling this value 1. So first two values are 1 and 3. You can see the first two values are 1 and 3. And from index 2, this fill method has started filling the elements with this value 1. So after that, all the values are 1. All the elements are 1. So this fill method can also be used on an array for which we already have some elements. But the use of fill method is simple. It will fill the elements of an array with a static value. Then we also have the from method on an array. The from method creates a new array from an iterable like string, map, set, etc. and it returns us that new array. So from method, it takes three parameters. The first parameter is the iterable, from where we want to create a new array. The second argument is a function, a callback function, and this function will be executed for each element of the array on which we are calling the from method. Okay, and the third argument is optional. This argument is used to specify what should be the value of this keyword inside the callback function which we are passing as the second argument. Let's understand from method with a simple example. And let's start with very basic example. So let's say we are going to call this array.from. So this from method, it is also a static method, and it is a static method on this array constructor. So we are calling this from method on this array constructor, and to this, if I pass hello like this, what it will do is here it will treat this string hello as an iterable. So basically from this string, it will create an array with each character as the element of that array, and it is going to return us that array. So let me go and let me create a variable. I'll call it as maybe arr1, or let's give it a meaningful name, maybe char array. And let me go ahead and let me log this char array. If I save the changes, you will see that it has returned us an array from this string, and in that array we have each character of that string as its element. Let's take another example of the from method. So again, on the array constructor, let's call this from method. To this, I'm going to pass this numbers array. So the first argument of this from method is an iterable. In this case, we are passing an array, and in the previous example, we passed a string value. And the second argument is a callback function. Here, we did not specify any callback function because we did not want it to execute any logic for each element. But here in this case, we do want to execute some logic for each element of this numbers array. So basically, this callback function is going to receive each element of this number array one by one. So let me simply call it as num. And what do we want to do here is, using this from method, we want to return a new array using this numbers array, and in that array, the elements of that array should be a multiplication of 2. So if in the numbers array the element is 1, in the new array the element should be 2. Here, the second element of this numbers array is 3. So the new array which this from method will return, there we should have 6 instead of 3. Then instead of 5, we should have 10. Instead of 7, we should have 14. And instead of 9, we should have 18. So we can simply say num multiplied by 2. And let's return it. Now let's create a variable, and let me simply call it as map array. And let's go ahead and let's log that map array. If I save the changes, you will see that it has returned us an array where the result is basically the multiplication of 2 for each element from this numbers array. So using from method also, we can create an array based on an existing iterable. Using fill method, we can fill an array with some static value. So both of these methods can be used to create an array, the elements for an array dynamically. This is all from this lecture. If you have any questions from this lecture, then feel free to ask it. Thank you for listening and have a great day.